Welcome back. So when you sit down for your Thanksgiving meal this Thursday, keep in mind it is going to be substantially more expensive for you here in California than in the rest of the nation. That's according to a survey by the American Farm Bureau Association, with Shannon Douglass as president of the California Farm Bureau. She joins us to explain. So, Shannon, thanks for taking the time. She joins us from Sacramento. Why is that? Why is it so much more expensive to eat Thanksgiving here?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a big hunk of difference in California. And we think that's a couple of things in play. Number one, it does cost more to grow food here in California. In California, we have the toughest regulatory environment really in the country. We have some of the highest labor costs. We know that just regulatory costs alone for some growers is about $1,600 per acre. That adds up, of course, very quickly. And in California, we've got some of the highest transportation costs, the highest energy costs. Much like so much of the other things in California, it just costs more here. So unfortunately for our consumers, it is higher than the rest of the country, but at least there were some decreases overall that I think will be helpful for people on that Thanksgiving dinner plate.
Decreases like what? What's the good news?
So turkey actually was down, which was a helpful one. And interestingly enough, stuffing is less expensive. So if you're an appreciator of stuffing, you've got a little bit of savings there too. But most of the other products were up, particularly things like the dairy products in California were a little bit higher, and nationally, of course, had been higher. But turkey was a helpful one. If that's the centerpiece of your Thanksgiving dinner, you get a little bit of a break there. And especially if you've been watching the sales, you can have even better savings actually on your turkey.
We talked to you not long ago, and part of the questions dealt with the farm labor. Are you having a problem with that based on the immigration enforcement that we've seen?
So not a ton has changed since we last talked as far as additional enforcements. What has remained the same is the fear that has created in our workforce. And that has made people still very nervous in going to their jobs. And I think people that are just worried overall about what could happen to themselves and their families, of course, that fear, unfortunately, is still there. We're hoping that we get some things worked through back in Washington, D.C., and we can have a situation that's just more comfortable, frankly, for our farm worker community in California.
Have you talked to any farmers who find themselves waiting for the Supreme Court to come down on this decision on tariffs? I mean, based on the oral arguments, it looks like the court is ready, possibly by a 6-3 ruling, to essentially rescind the tariff authority from the president. Would that have an impact? I assume it would on the farm economy.
Definitely. It's very interesting, particularly in California. We grow a lot of products that are exported. A lot of our markets really depend on our overseas customers. And so it could have a very helpful impact. And then there are some of our products, for example, our friends in lumber actually prefer the situation that we've got now with fewer imported products, in their case, impacting their pricing. But for most of agriculture, we really do prefer the more open markets and reduce tariffs. So there are definitely farmers that are looking at what that impact that will have and what it might mean to our bottom lines for the next year and the next crop cycle.
And so returning back to the regulatory situation that has sort of driven up prices, there was a period, I remember, where agriculture had a lot of clout in Sacramento. The Farm Bureau was a group to be reckoned with. Has that declined over time? Do you feel that you have the ear of the legislature?
You know, I think it's an interesting thing that evolves over time. And it's important to point out that we have lost a lot of farmers in California because of this tough regulatory environment that we've been forced to navigate. In the last 10 years, we've lost about 20% of the farmers in this state. And that's significant, of course. Unfortunately, we're one of the leading states in the country in farm loss. And that's not the leading list I want us to be on. So we certainly have that as a challenge. And I think that while things evolve over time, we know we've got an uphill battle. We're also appreciative of the time that we do get to spend with our elected officials. And I think there's a recognition that producing great food in California is important and that having the farms in this state is valuable. So I think there's some recognition of that, but we're also facing a challenge of there are fewer of us able to survive in California. And that definitely has impacted our clout.
Shannon Douglass is president of the California Farm Bureau, joining us from Sacramento. Thank you for taking the time, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well.